part of the famous rebellion and showdown between Korach and his following and Moshe and Aaron. They are instructed to come bring the Ketores to the Oel Moed, and the pasuk at the end of Sheni says that Korach took this Kol Ha'idah, took the entire following, entire community who was following him, and began this rebellion. They met outside the Oel Moed with their pans of incense, and the rest is history. And we often think of this and the followers of Korah as a whole group of rebellion, as a group of rebels who come to fight against the Kavod Shemayim, to fight against Moshe and Aaron. When in reality, Rav Yaakov Moshe Charlap, the Tzaddik the Bracha, in his Mei Marom, asks the question, he said, it cannot be that so many people followed this insight, this rebellion of Korach. In fact, he says that that's not what was going on. It wasn't that each and every one of them were rebelling against God, were rebelling against Moshe and Aaron. In fact, it says chas v'shalom to be so, or to think that such was the case. Rather suggests Ruchala that what was going on was a human phenomenon and one of what he calls the weaknesses of man, that is to go ahead to do things without thinking. That to follow our neighbors, to follow what other people are doing, to follow in the peer pressure of what it may be, and to just go to do as we hear, as we see. Korach was going around telling people it wasn't against only me, this rebellion, this argument, that this corruption of Moshe and Aaron, but it's against all of you. And nobody, or many, all of these followers, suggests Rav Halak, we're not having to not intellectually decide to rebel against Moshe and Aaron, but rather they heard what Korach had to say, and without really giving much thought or analyzing of it, they followed what those around them were doing. They followed what Korach, they followed without thinking. And suggests Rav Charlap, that's one of the messages that we can learn from this episode of Korach, besides for Korach's rebellion himself, but for all the followers, that it may not have been the way we would assume to be, that they believed Korach, they agreed with Korach against Moshe and Aaron, but rather that they saw what was going on, and without giving it much thought, without critically thinking about it, they followed what was going on, which is an important lesson for each of us, to not merely, when something comes, when it's conflict, when something we hear, when something we see, to not simply go with the flow in the sense of not thinking, but to make sure we are analyzing, to make sure we are questioning, to make sure we are critically thinking about whatever situations, whatever scenarios come to our laps, whatever comes up for us, to not go through life thinking absently, but to make sure we are thinking for ourselves, being individuals, having the thought, putting the focus, and really critically thinking about what are we doing, how are we doing it, and what there needs to be that we can learn from it, or that we should change or challenge appropriately.